You probably have already heard that scientists meet at conferences all the time. But what happens on conferences? And why would scientists go there? Bart went on the biannual meeting of the German Neuroscience Society, in German Neurowissenschaftliche Gesellschaft NWG, in March, and he took his digital audio recorder with him. He brought back some sound bites from other visitors at the conference. We will hear from a professor, a student, and an exhibitor about what they came for. At the same time, Bart was invited to the Women's Careers and Networks Conference, a second conference that was organized by PhD students and a postdoc. Bart talked to all three of them and also about his own contribution as a speaker at WOCANET. As always, you can listen to the whole conversation on Patreon. Patreon is a community service that enables you to support our work with a monthly pledge, and it enables us to give you some perks in return. Besides my patrons, I am the sole financial provider for Science for Progress, and I also invest a lot of time into running everything. I'm also between careers and trying to build a freelance business. In other words, I'm currently living off my savings. So it becomes harder to continue to invest time and money into Science for Progress, at least at the current levels, let alone trying to increase the reach and quality of the project, which I would really love to do. If you help me cover my ongoing expenses, which include hosting of the website and the podcast, editing software, etc., it will already mean a lot. Once that goal is reached, I can invest in better equipment, for example, a better microphone. This one is 20 years old. Additional funds would help me free up time. If you like what my volunteers Bart Görten and Susan Limburg and I are creating, please consider to contribute. You can learn everything about it on the Patreon website, www.patreon.com/sci4progress. My name is Dennis Eckmeyer and you're listening to episode 26 of the Science for Societal Progress podcast. So how are you doing?
I have a lot of students at the moment.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So just working with you, because you're actually, you're in a different person's lab, right?
Martin has his own students, so this is 10 students just working on my subjects, topics. So I personally manage those 10, but as some of you might already speculate, it's not too easy to get 10 students on the same project or coordinated at the same time, but luckily enough, they all started one after another, and so it's not that problematic.
So they're at different stages, and not all of them need the intense attention that they need in the beginning.
Exactly, and 7 of them are rotation students, so they only stick around for like 4 weeks to 2 months, and they don't have to like produce any kind of thesis. They just need to get some hands-on experience.
You went to conferences.
That's true.
What conferences were this?
So during spring in Göttingen, every 2 years, there's the NWG meeting, which is a meeting of the Neurowissenschaftliche Gesellschaft of Germany, which means Neuroscientist Society. And just before that, there's a student-organized conference called WOCANET for Women Career Network on the topic of gender equality and feminism.
Okay, cool. Let's go at these topics backwards, I guess, by starting with the conference, and then in the end, you can tell us about what you were talking, because you gave a talk at WOCANET, and I'm interested in knowing what you told people. So I think we should end with that. Scientists need to meet and talk to each other. Who would have known? I know that usually people think that we just sit in cellars and do weird things. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we go outside to meet other people and talk about our science. These conferences are a great place to exchange ideas, to develop new ideas when talking with colleagues, things like that. And of course, there's always some main lecture where some more prominent scientists give larger lectures, which is most of the time fun. And you went there, and you took your audio recorder with you for us?
Yes, that's true, and I apologize for the sound quality, but that's as good as it gets for the first try.
It's actually pretty good. Okay, so let's listen into the first one of them.
So my name is Karin Nordstrom, and I'm an associate professor at Flinders University in Australia.
As a faculty member, what do you get out of being on a conference?
Since Australia is so far away from the rest of the world, going to international conferences is really my big opportunity to get to know what's going on in neuroscience in general, or in my field of vision in particular. So it's really important when you come from a country that's so far away to be able to interact with my peers and find out what is going on.
But the stress must be really high to actually come from Australia to Germany, isn't it?
It's a long trip, so you have to choose your conferences really carefully. And I don't go to that many conferences because it is such a long trip, or I try to combine several conferences into one trip.
Did you combine this time with any other conference?
Sadly enough, not. I was going to combine it with some lab visits, but because I have to go back and teach next week, I couldn't combine it this time, but usually I do.
When would you recommend starting to go to conferences for a student?
As soon as you have some results to show, so if you have results from your master's thesis, as soon as you have results from your PhD, I would definitely recommend going, because it's such a good opportunity to get feedback on your work, to find out that people actually care about what you do, other people than the people in your lab, and to network, to meet other PhD students and senior scientists.
Would you say there's a hierarchy to the different forms of, like for example, posters, talks, etc.? What would you say is there a hierarchy of these contributions?
So people often think that posters are not as good as giving a talk, but in my experience, you can often get better feedback when you have a poster, because you stand and talk to a person, maybe one-on-one or one to a few people, and you can get questions, really off-center questions that you wouldn't get in a talk, because maybe that person wouldn't have spoken up. And so for meeting new people, I think poster sessions are excellent. And at this meeting, at the Göttingen Neuroscience meeting, I think the poster sessions have been so well organized, and I've had such good interactions with other people around the posters.
What was your favorite contribution on at the conference this year?
I think the consciousness without a cortex talk, when there was a talk about crows and parrots and how they solve complicated tasks. It was a late talk, I was very jet lagged, but it was so much fun, such excellent movies, and really, really fun.
Oh, that was Ono Günteken from the Uni of Bochum. Yeah, his talks are always excellent. Thanks for taking the time to give us this short soundbite.
That's all right, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much, Bart.
So yeah, that was Karin Nordstrom. And Karin, by the way, is my former supervisor from Adelaide, Australia. She taught me a lot about intracellular recordings in dragonflies, and to respect her setups, which I still have to apologize for. I just changed around her setup, and she told me never to do that again.
Oh, no. And she's originally from Sweden, right? Wrong.
Yeah, she's originally from Sweden, and I think she studied in Lund University, where she also got her PhD.
And then she was in Australia when you met her, but she was back in Sweden for a while after that, right? And now she's again in Australia as a professor, right?
Yeah, she was very successful and already had a permanent position in Australia, but then gave that up to go a step further and become a group leader at the Uppsala University, and then returned again to Adelaide at Flinders University to be an associate professor.
This happens quite often, right? That as a scientist, your career takes you to different places. For many people, that's the case.
Yeah, but this makes it even more important to meet in conferences, because if we wouldn't do that, we would never see each other and never have the possibility to talk about like the scientific development that we took in the meantime. And especially with Karin and me, we often find out that we were interested in similar questions and then took off to different topics, which then actually delivered different results, and then we can compare those and in general have a fruitful discussion about this. But this is the case for most scientists that you meet. What I found very interesting in Karen's soundbite was that she actually mentioned that there's better discussions at posters than at presentations. For the layman, there's typically two different forms of contributions that you can make to a conference. One of them is a presentation, which means that you have a PowerPoint presentation or generally give a talk about a topic. And after that, there's like a general discussion with the audience. Or you can have a poster presentation, which you later will hear from Robert about, where there is a poster that you created, and at the poster you discuss directly with other scientists. Karen prefers those as they create better discussions, especially with preliminary data where you just have an idea or just did a few experiments to prove a concept.
Yeah, that's probably because these poster sessions are less formal and people are more likely to give you an honest feedback on the spot. I don't think that's the case if you give a talk. If you give a talk, then it's mostly professors and colleagues who would walk up to you to have a conversation with you after the talk. Whereas at the poster session, really everybody can show up. And you would be having conversations with students, graduate students and postdocs, even more often than with professors.
So yeah, my name is Robert Kossen. I'm a PhD student working together with Bart in my 4th year now, so nearing completion. And after some project finding, I'm currently working on temperature sensation in Drosophila.
Robert is one of my students, and it was the easiest to get his poster for the show notes. And if you're interested in that, you can look at the poster while he explains it. Drosophila antennae. And if you're not into insects and not into thermotransduction, maybe you want to skip that part. But the more important part was for us to give you a first-hand feeling of what it is like to be in a poster session if you never went to one.
So, as I said, I'm currently working on temperature sensation in Drosophila. And even though there are several temperature-sensitive organs in the fly, I'm currently working on a specialized set of cells found in the arista, which is the most distal part of Drosophila's antenna. And within the arista, we can find a population of 6 temperature-sensitive neurons. They can be clearly subdivided into 2 groups of 3 cells each, hot cells and cold cells. Hot cells, for example, show an excitatory response when you expose the fly to an increase in temperature, while also showing a decrease in activity when the fly is exposed to a decrease in temperature. And of course, the cold cells show the vice versa response pattern to that. So in my project that I'm presenting on this poster here, we have basically 2 parts, a more fundamental part in which we aim to better characterize the response properties of these cells in regard to relative versus absolute temperature changes, and also in regards to stimulus history. And what we found, just to sum that up real quick, amongst other things, was that these sensors are relative temperature changes. So for instance, a relative change from 18 to 24 degrees Celsius is a 6-degree change and might elicit a bigger response than a temperature step that was to an absolute higher temperature but started already from a higher temperature. In addition to this more fundamental understanding of how these cells work in detail, we also found actually an expression of an ion channel, a mechanosensitive trip ion channel in the hot cell population of these cells, a channel that so far has not been implicated in temperature sensation at all. And we, of course, were interested to see if this is just some sort of random expression, or if we can actually pinpoint any sort of function in regard to temperature sensation onto this channel. So we had a look, as you usually do in Drosophila, at a few different mutations, and used the powerful transgenic system that is Drosophila, and could actually find that mutations and null mutations of this trip ion channel actually lead to a reduced response in these hot cells. The temperature sensitivity is not completely lost, but we do have a strong effect on the temperature sensation, which can actually be rescued, meaning the response properties of the cells can be restored to what can be found at wild-type levels by reintroducing a functional copy of the channel. And furthermore, in addition to physiological experiments, in my case the entire thing was working on in vivo calcium imaging, we also did some additional behavioral experiments to see if these effects on the hot cells and the temperature sensitive cells are actually behaviorally relevant. And what we found that actually mutations of this TRP channel actually lead to changes in the temperatures that are preferred and tolerated by Drosophila in a temperature gradient experiment.
If you would have to break it down into 3 sentences that are the most important, could you do that?
Drosophila temperature sensation happens amongst other things in the arista. The arista houses 3 hot cells and 3 cold cells. These are relative temperature changes, and a mechanosensory TRP channel is involved in the temperature transduction of the hot cell population.
A protein that is actually associated with touch sensation had a role in temperature sensation. What does this mean in evolutionary terms?
For a long time now, there has been a concept that the different sensory modalities might not be as clearly cut, divided from each other as you might initially think. And there has been an ongoing theory that is especially favored in our lab of some sort of protosensory cell, so meaning an original cell from which all more specialized sensory organs have evolved. And in this particular case, I think it makes a very compelling argument for that view on the topic, as this mechanosensory touch-sensitive TRP channel is in this case moonlighting, as we would say, because it's basically not its primary job in another sensory modality. And thinking that this might arise from an original cell type from which all other senses originated or were derived from is, in my opinion, initially more plausible than thinking that a mechanosensory channel might have been adapted for temperature sensation later.
So, Robert, why are you going to a conference? What's your take on what's helpful there?
Even though digitalization made many things much simpler, it is still the best opportunity for networking, talking to people, learning not only stuff about other people's projects, but also about new aspects about your own projects. Even the first conference that I ever attended, shortly before I started as a PhD, when I was still a master's student, I got some very helpful insights that, especially at that time when I was still a bit new to the field, people could help me see approaches and other aspects of my project that I didn't think before at that moment. In addition to that, it also gives me an opportunity to have a more colloquial outlook onto topics that I'm not directly working on, and that I am remotely interested in, and listening to some talks and some posters is usually much less involved while giving you an essential overview instead of reading a paper, for example.
When do you think students should start going to conferences?
If you have the opportunity, as soon as you can. So, as I said, my first conference I attended even before I was a PhD. When I was basically wrapping up my master thesis, I had the opportunity to attend a student-organized conference in Germany, which is called the Neurodovo, the neurodoctoral workshop. And I think it was actually a great experience for me, because it allowed me to, even at that early stage, give a presentation. So it might be hard at big conferences like the one we are attending right now. It might be hard for young researchers, especially at the beginning of their PhD, to get a opportunity to give a talk. Getting poster presentations is usually possible, but giving a talk might be hard. So if there are conferences that allow you to do that early in your career and practice that, because if you decide to stay in science or even in many industry jobs, giving talks and presentations is the one constant thing you probably do until you retire. So it's never too early to get practice in that, and it's also never too early to get feedback from others and a better overview over your field.
The Neurobiological Doctoral Workshop, a German conference organized by students and for students. So there's no PIs and no postdocs or anybody else there. There's only doctoral students and maybe master students that are going to be a PhD student in a few weeks or a few months. And they present their work to each other, which is a great thing to do. I organized one myself when I was a student. And I think this year's Neurodovo, as it's called, is in Würzburg, which is a nice place to visit. And it's open for all students. So even if you're not in Germany or if you're not from Germany, you can easily join. It's very cheap. It's about, I think, 60 euros, including food and accommodation and the conference fee. So you just need 60 euros and the tickets to Würzburg, and you can go to the whole workshop. So on most conferences, there are also booths by companies where you can buy new microscopes and see new developments and techniques, etc. These booths are quite expensive, as I learned, and it's not like a this is not a spontaneous purchase that you make. Like, oh, I think I still have €500,000 lying around. I'm going to buy myself a new 2-photon microscope. What's on the exhibition today?
Yeah, so let's just listen to what John Stowers has to say about this.
Hi, I'm John from New Zealand, currently in Vienna. We founded Loop Bio, Max and myself, after working in a Drosophila neuroscience lab and spending a lot of time writing tools and writing image processing and tracking software and thinking, oh, this is actually quite fun. I quite like this, and I think that we could do this as a company and try and provide solutions for other animals and for other questions and for really cutting-edge questions that we thought no one in the market was working on, and of course they're the most fun things to work on for ourselves. So here we are 3 years later, and we're still going well and expanding, and it's been stressful, but so far so good.
So did I catch that right? You were actually a bunch of lab mates from a lab in Vienna?
Yeah, that's true. Max and I met, we weren't in the same lab, but we're on the same campus, so the other founder, and since then we hired 2 other people that were both literally in the same lab, so it's not so much a spin out, but a collection of people that all came to science at the same place at the same time and really were compatible with one another, and it was just the perfect way and perfect situation to move this into a company.
What can I buy from Loop Bio?
So we try and service anything to do with video recording, video analysis and video tracking, focusing on high resolution, high frame rate and non-model species. So this means pose tracking in natural environments, high frame rate recording for things like kinematics, multi-camera recording for 3D, behavioral coding and behavioral classification to some degree, but mostly things that aren't as commonly seen as just a mouse in an open field. We want to try and do the other more novel kinds of model systems and behavioral experiments.
What's the craziest thing that you tracked?
So we tracked some birds dancing doing a courtship dance in the jungle in Panama using a portable 3D tracking system. So this was calibrated in the field with multiple cameras and then tracked using deep learning to reconstruct the 3D position.
All right, that sounds fantastic. The reason why we came to you is because we are interested in what a new company gains from coming to a conference, a scientific conference.
I mean, for us, it's about visibility. It's actually hard to think what the marketing channels are for services in science, and I think scientists and postdocs and PhD students, it's a little bit of a different industry. They're not reading spam mail or they're not reading advertisements so much. The only free time they have sometimes is at a conference. So being visible and present at a conference is how people become aware of what we do, and we think we can do nicer demos and catch people's eye more effectively in person than other sort of direct and conventional marketing approaches. So for conferences, for us, it's about seeing people, making people aware that we're here, keeping our finger on the pulse of what the frontier of behavioral research is in terms of methods and the questions people ask, and really also having a good time because we like to keep in contact with the scientists and the science too.
What I always ask myself when I was a student is, I mean, I guess you can't answer that for this conference, but in general, if you have differently sized conferences, how expensive is it to have a booth on a conference?
I mean, the cheapest booth would be a few €1,000, so 2,000 to 3,000 to 4,000 euros for a cheap booth. And then you pay more for accommodation and travel, etc. But I guess I don't remember what it costs to register as a student or as a presenter or as a professor, but I think we're paying quite a lot more than that.
That's true. Okay, so do you still go to posters and talks yourself?
Yeah, I'm speaking to you right now because Max is in the keynote. I'm learning about bats, I believe. So we visit the posters. That's probably a good way to survey what most people are working on. And typically the keynotes are when we're frantically packing up in the morning or otherwise quite busy. We usually try and have one person doing keynotes or posters and the other person manning the booth if we send 2 people to the conference.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, Bart, and I'd like to talk to you again sometime if you're ever interested in what it's like to be a company in science.
John actually took his developments from science and made a real company out of it. And I think it's a great example of building a new career path from science and from academia outward.
Okay, so let's move on to the Women Career Network.
I'm Louisa Homayawacker. I work at the German Primate Center, where I'm currently a PhD student, and I'm just about to finish.
I'm Priya Gurumurthy. I'm a postdoc at present, and I work at the Max Planck Institute for Biophysical Chemistry, and I'm nowhere close to finishing.
I'm Lyuba Zakharova. I'm doing my PhD in ecological modeling in the forestry department at the university.
This is, I guess, for you the first conference that you organized by yourself?
For me, yeah, it is the first conference that I've been co-organizer and I've actively taken part in the organizational process. But I think we have an experienced person here, so that was definitely an easy road for us. Because Luisa was more experienced. This is her second time doing WOCANet.
What do you think is the thing that scientists get out of going to a conference?
I think when you go to a conference, you meet a lot of different people who have different opinions, and you share kind of your scientific view, but also all your other views in small conversation and coffee breaks. And I think that's a really valuable experience because usually you interact with people through publications or papers, and when you put a face behind that and motives and you kind of see them, it's a personal connection and it makes science more valuable.
What makes WOCANet so special? I'm not sure I can answer right now from the point of view of the participant, but I would definitely recommend to try to organize something like this during your early stage of career, because it provides you with a deep understanding how it works. And also, I think I did way more networking while organizing the conference than I would do it if I would just attend it. I think last year when I was just attending, it was quite superficial for me. I didn't learn as much as I learned during this 1 year. And it's a really great experience. It's not my first conference I'm organizing, but it was really unique experience in a way that we worked in an international and also interdisciplinary group. Also we're natural scientists, more or less, but we have also really different background, not only from our science, but in general, in our way how we see things. And I really enjoyed our conceptual talks, let's say. And we had a lot of technical tasks, but which I think we did really great. But it was also a lot of talks in depth, which I actually miss a bit in my ordinary life, in my everyday life. And it was for me really valuable in organizing this conference. I couldn't expect that I would talk about such things with people without reason to prepare something like the WOCANet.
Great, but this sounds like a lot of work. So could you estimate how much time you invested into organizing WOCANet, and basically on a weekly basis, or all in all maybe?
So I kind of know for sure that so it's not consistent continuing work depending on which part of WOCANet you want to contribute to. So there are different teams and each teams kind of go through different phases. But I think overall, cumulatively a person easily works for 3 to 4 months on it. At least 3 months cumulatively, I would say, if put together all the hours that we consider, 3 to 4 months depending on which position you take, if you're a team leader or if you're part of 2 different teams, it's a choice. It's a very free choice that we had, that each one chose to do what they want to do and they chose how much amount of time they wanted to spend on it. So it was no way, I think I can talk for all teams when I say that it was no way demanded from that particular team leader that they spend that much amount of time doing this. So it was very flexible, but I can easily gauge an average of 3 to 4 proper months of time being spent for WOCANet. And we started a year ago, so our first kickoff meeting was in Jan or Feb. So 3 months of good working time.
What was the most impressive moments for you personally?
So I organized the conference also in 2017 when it took place, and I wanted to try something new this year. That was kind of my goal. I wanted to experiment And I got to do that because we incorporated a panel discussion. And with a panel discussion, you set up 5 people in a panel, you ask some questions, but you have no idea where that's going to go. And you have no idea how they're going to answer, if you're going to like their answer or you're not going to like their answer. And you have to deal with that. You have to trust that you've done enough work before, that it leads somewhere productive. And that was a super valuable experience for me this year, and I'm really excited about that.
So this year what was very interesting for me was that we wanted to gather a team that kind of believes that we need to bring the problems and address them on a table. So not just discuss them profusely and then let them go by. And I think it was great that we had mostly like-minded people on the organizational team that were very open to address WOCANet this year, or to conduct WOCANet this year with a particular motto that said towards diversity or towards a dialogue, and mainly focus on inclusiveness and diversity. So it was not something that was exclusively for women, but something that kind of expanded horizons to also include men or people in science, basically. So I think that for me was interesting, and it was accepted by the organizing team, which was important, and I think we could pull it off. Was great.
I would join Louisa. I think the most exciting experiment was this panel discussion and also our attempt to make a survey and ask people around. Because as I understood before, the WOCANet was mainly providing a place for speakers to talk. And that is what something we created by ourselves. You can call it like exploring a terra incognita, or maybe opening the Pandora box. I would go for the first metaphor. So it was really interesting exploring process, and I'm not sure we finished this exploration. I think we will talk about this more, and probably it's something which is going on beyond the WOCANet, and it was really exciting and interesting for me.
All right. So this were the organizers of WOCANet, and for me it was quite impressive that those students made this very impressive conference and the workshops and all of these parts of the conference and organized it that well. This should entice many more students to organize their own conferences, as these people were very successful in organizing it and attracting many interesting speakers and even more students and participants.
Well, yes, but they also said that it took them a lot of work. And doesn't that take away time from publishing papers?
Of course it does. But first of all, organizing a conference also is a very important milestone in your CV as a scientist. And second of all, you have to do something with your life, and making a PhD is not time wasted just by studying. You should do something that you enjoy. And at least for me, organizing the NeuroDovo when I was a PhD student was a great thing. I had a lot of fun and was a very successful conference as well. Even so, that has never helped.
Yeah, I couldn't. I was busy doing other things. I was applying for postdocs positions in that time.
So see, that's the difference between Dennis and me. He planned and did all these important things to then take another nice postdoc. I just got drunk on the right conference and landed in another postdoc.
And who got the better job? I think you did.
Basically, that just says there's a lot of luck involved.
Yes, exactly. So, but what was the content on WOCANet? What were people talking about?
Generally, I would say stories about success in science and success in other parts of academia, and obviously also ways out of academia after you graduated, out of female perspective, I would say.
But they also said that they were more open to other minorities too this time, right?
Yeah, so I think many of them recognize that a lot of gender equality funds in Germany have a kind of narrow application window. So first of all, there's a lot of equal opportunity funds that are only open to biological women. If you identify as a woman but you're born with a male body, you can't get those funds. Furthermore, many of the gender equality or family equality funds are only open to females. So very often, if you're the male caregiver, you can't get funding or support.
Yeah.
And obviously, these young scientists saw the opportunity to open the discussion for exactly this question. Should we create equality based on biological gender, or should we create equality based on chances?
What do you mean with chances?
Chance to be successful based on their merits. And if I can't be as successful as you because I get discriminated because of my gender or religion or whatever, there should be some sort of support for me that nivelates those discriminations.
Mm-hmm.
And
so that everybody has the same opportunity to be successful, and that only the merit makes the difference.
I get, yeah.
Like talent and the work that you put in and things like that.
Exactly. And I think that, so from what I gathered from that conference, this was their main goal and their overarching topic. Yeah, but there were also quite a number of like really directly applicable workshops about like diversity in science groups, and also talks of people that were from the industry talking about how they saw their career and their chances as a woman, or how they saw their chances in some other company that was not directly related to their scientific topic.
So what's the overall? What do they think? Is it great in Germany as a woman?
Seemingly, it's different for everybody in the field. If I would have to pick a single story that would be the most interesting to me, it was the story of Birgit Wirtz, who is an associate director at Procter & Gamble in Frankfurt, and who spent a lot of time in South America with her family, and who's the major breadwinner of her family. She gave a very emphatic talk on the idea of taking all your chances and not taking a chance because you already feel like you couldn't make it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very, very, very good talk. And so like personally, I could take a lot of like her life experience as an interesting and helpful suggestions for your own career. Like I liked her 2-minute rule. Like
2-minute rule.
Yeah, for every failure that you make, and for every failed attempt, you can only be 2 minutes sorry for yourself. After 2 minutes, you have to just forget about it. I think that's great.
Well, that's easy said.
I guess if you can make the rule and can live with it, that's awesome. But I thought I really like that. And I also like...
Yeah, it sounds very motivational.
Yeah, it was a very motivational talk. I really, really enjoyed that talk. And there were other men there as well, and there was even a male student organizing it. Mm-hmm. And there were also people of other genders that don't identify as binary.
Okay.
And so it's a really nice, diverse group of people meeting there. It's around every 1.5 years, so watch out for the next Wocanet.
Find the summary for this episode and further links in the show notes on our website www.scienceforprogress.eu. And please send us your questions, critique or suggestions by email info@scienceforprogress.eu or on social media @sci4progress for Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. It is becoming increasingly difficult to continue and grow Science for Progress. If you like our work, please consider supporting us through Patreon. For $6 per month, you can listen to the extended conversation that I have with my guests and my co-host, Bart Gurton. But you don't have to pledge $6, you can pledge any amount you like. Check out the perks for different levels of contribution on www.patreon.com/sci4progress. I would love to welcome you, our listeners, in our community. My sincerest thanks to those who are already supporting us. Thank you for listening. Have a good day. Bye-bye.